Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We're continuing our journey over the Himalayas into India. This could take a long time. I think it took them 9 months or a year. Yeah. While we were in Canada, Matthew found the movie Kundun on, I don't know what we're watching, Netflix or something, which is the story, it's Martin Scorsese's film about the Dalai Lama escaping Tibet from the Chinese invasion. And apparently you can't watch it in the US because it makes the Chinese mad, and so the entertainment companies don't stream it here, but in Canada they do. Anyway, so one thing was just a really beautifully filmed, and another one of those painful stories where you could just really live the lives. I mean, Chogyam Trungpa was 19 when he walked over the Himalayas, and I think the Dalai Lama was 14. I think he's a little younger. You got them? Okay. And, you know, just what a burden on that young man to be the one who had to make all these decisions. And then to leave his country with all of that going on because people felt he could do more for the people of Tibet outside of Tibet than in, and never been back. Anyway, I think it's something really for us to take in. And I wanted just to start by saying that I think a lot of us have this unconscious, semi-conscious belief that if we do everything right and we work hard and we behave ourselves and you know, cross the T's and dot the I's, then our lives will work out okay, right? And we won't have anything terrible happen to us. And the corollary to that, of course, is if something bad does happen to us, it's our fault, right? So, I remember even when my mother had cancer and people were trying to tell me, well, there must have been something she did that set her up. Yeah, smoke cigarettes. But that isn't what they meant, you know, that there was a psychological thing. So that's really pervasive in our culture. It is not pervasive in the Buddhist cultures. It actually makes no sense to them that we would think that if we did everything right, everything would go okay. And I think actually that's one of the things that attracts us to Buddhism is that it doesn't do, in fact, they say it doesn't have a word for guilt. Right? So there's not a word for guilt in Tibetan. The Buddhist view, things that we wish wouldn't happen are likely to happen anyway. And there's two reasons, or kind of two streams of thinking about that. And one of them is the whole body of teachings on karma, which I know we tend to have a naive view of karma, which is kind of the judgmental, you know, if you do something, it's gonna come back at you. It's a lot more subtle than that, but it really says, the view is that whatever's happening now had causes and multiple causes and conditions going way back in time and way wide in place. So we once had a Tibetan teacher here, and I remember it was during the Desert Storm, because I remember asking him what we could do to stop the war. And he looked at me like, is that out of my mind? He said, well, you can't stop the war. That's the karma of that situation. You know, you didn't make it. The flip side is everything you do now is causes and conditions for something else to happen. That's going forward. Hey, Molly. So we can't undo the warming of the planet. We can't undo the political situation. It has lots of causes and conditions, and it's very complicated. The Tibetans in the 1950s could not change the fact that the Chinese were invading. and that they didn't have any allies. Apparently at that point, they asked for the Americans and the British and the United Nations to make a resolution against the Chinese, and they didn't get any traction. Because for generations, they wouldn't have anything to do with any of their neighbors, and so they weren't on the map, so they didn't have the alliances. So, they got invaded and conquered. So that's one, is that what happens when bad things happen in the Buddhist view, there's just all of these complex conditions that set that up. And then the other kind of corollary is, in the Buddhist view, everything's impermanent. So if you have good circumstances, they're not going to last. And if you have bad circumstances, they're not going to last, because things don't last, even though we tend to wish they would. So even though that sounds like it could be depressing, it's actually a big relief. Because what it says is that that whole burden of guilt and the energy we put into wishing things were different than they are, we don't have to put in that energy. No point. The only thing we need to do is to pay attention to how we respond to the circumstances that we face. And we talked about this before, but one of the things we value meditation for is giving us the space to make choices about our responses and giving us the clarity to understand, is that person really out to get me, or are they just being their neurotic self? And either of those things could be true, but it'd be helpful to know which one of them is true. People who have met Tibetan refugees, and this was in the 50s, and it's still true now because people are still leaving, they're really, many people have commented with surprise that even though it's a hugely traumatic thing that happened to that population, they don't seem traumatized. Is that your experience?
You're pretty chill.
Yeah.
They're just like,
right.
They don't dwell on it at all.
They don't dwell on it.
No, when I was talking to people.
Right. In fact, some people say, this was quoted by the teacher we just saw in Nova Scotia last weekend. He said, this older man said, what I'm most worried about is losing my compassion. That all of this would make it hard for me to practice my compassion, which is so valuable to me. I've also heard of people saying they feel compassionate towards the Chinese who are committing the atrocities because what suffering they must be experiencing and what karma they will set up for themselves. So it's not as though that they're saints, it's just a different orientation. I didn't bring it, but there's a book that a psychology professor at Naropa wrote, Spacious Minds, where she went and interviewed a lot of people in refugee camps, trying to bring, because she's an academic, right, trying to bring the trauma paradigm. Couldn't make it work because they weren't responding the way you would predict that they would. In Mahayana Buddhism, there's a slogan that goes, when the world is full of evil, transform all mishaps into the path of Bodhi. Bodhi means awakening. So we could think for a minute about what that means. I have a friend, she actually teaches this class that I'm taking. She's from Northern California, Shambhala. She's an older lady and she fell and broke her kneecap a couple weeks ago. And she just got out of, I know, just the thought of it kind of makes it like, ooh. She was in rehab there for a couple weeks. She just got home. She was so happy, she seemed so happy every time you talked to her. And what she said to us was, it's like being on retreat. I mean, she had a cast from her hip to her ankle, so she couldn't go anywhere. So she just had to stay in bed. But she took it like it could be a retreat, which she would otherwise not do. I don't know, how does that sound to you? Does it sound like Pollyanna-ish or possibly useful? It's when you face something challenging that it becomes part of your path of awakening. Two nods and two
The
head shakes.
obstacle is the path. This is something I remember from very early days of Buddhism.
Does it work? Does it make sense to you?
Makes sense to me.
I also think the obstacles can clarify the path too by themselves. Like, sometimes you can realize your priorities. Just or make you more committed to the path you're on.
Do you have an example?
Like, yeah, like whenever, like I remember when I had my surgery and I was in bed and I was like, oh gosh. And I was relieved also that some of the deadlines I needed to be doing, I was pretty happy that, okay, I don't have to do them now because I can say I'm in bed. So that made me realize that, that some of those things I'm doing, maybe I don't need to do that much work related or something. Or other adversities that, like when my mom passed away, it was more about, I was already on this path and it was like, so that made me understand it better. Didn't make it very easy, but that made me appreciate this Buddhism path, Buddhist teaching path that I was on, reinforced it even further.
Makes me think about that idea in Buddhism about the second arrow. The first arrow is the painful thing that happens, and the second arrow is all that stuff around it shouldn't happen. It's not fair. You take out that one, and then it's just stuff. I was gonna say that stuff happens, like that bumper sticker.
Big whoop.
We know what you mean.
Yeah.
Obstacles to me also, it's an opportunity for you to realize where you're stuck. So if you recognize it as an obstacle, then maybe it's a habit that you need to get rid of. You can actually see it as an obstacle, and now you have the ability to approach it in a way that will help you get by it next time.
I mean, it's really interesting because I'm thinking about the other trend, our typical trend in our society, which is don't think about it. Think about all those people around with the earbuds, like don't notice. And I think that's one reason actually people hesitate to meditate, because you end up noticing. Oops.
And it's a little scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good, because it's kind of deep. It's about you find your true self, that's underneath that. Yeah, and somebody, last Martin Luther King Day, I started hearing this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. And it's kind of like what what you're saying. Only I think that now about our world falling apart. That when it's dark enough you see the light. That's from the speech he gave the day before he was shot. I've been to the mountaintop speech. I don't know if it's quite the same as bring all obstacles to the path of Bodhi, but it does do that same thing of kind of flipping our customary view, like what's negative, what's positive. So this, of course, that this series that we've been doing is a valiant effort to articulate Shambhala 101. per request. And it's been good because I think we sort of at least take all of these stories for granted and having to go back into like Shambhala, our community. Shambhala, of course, is a name that's traditional in Buddhism, pointing to, might say, an enlightened society or a kingdom that supports meditation and practice. But we use it. It was brought to us by the founder of our network, who is Chogyam Trungpa, who we've been talking about as one of the many lamas in the Tibetan tradition that left Tibet for India in the 1950s. What I wanted to do is read this passage. We have this book in the library. It's by Sakya Rinpoche Rinpoche, who's Chogyam Trungpa's son, one of his sons. And he wrote this whole book called The Shambhala Principle, which actually almost all of it is things his father told him and then how he understands them. So this one really caught my attention. He says, he wrote, so now you have to envision where Marion was walking us last time, over to the Himalayas, right? Looking at India from afar with the Chinese army arrayed over the Brahmaputra, the river that they were going to have to cross. Being forced to leave his home and venture into a great unknown world, my father began to ponder the notions of human nature and society altogether. It was during his escape, high in the Himalayas, as he gazed onto the great plains of India, that a vision to create an enlightened human society, a network of wisdom and kindness, arose. Such a society would honor and encourage innate goodness and cultivate the wisdom in all cultures and traditions. He felt that the essential ingredient to create such a society was bravery. This bravery had the inherent quality of not giving up on humanity. At the same time, in order to do this, he realized that he had to be expansive and open-minded. Now, it's interesting Sabina, what you just said about scary to actually look at what's going on in the world, and that's why bravery, that's true. Because what you mostly see in people acting out is that they're so scared. This Shambhala vision of enlightened society, as he later called it, revealed to him how a good human society could occur. And it happened at the same time that his ancient culture was being destroyed. His inspiration about enlightened society was not to recreate Tibet, for he had reflected intimately on the shortcomings of his own culture. Rather, he was harnessing the deep wish for a good society that has existed throughout the evolution of humanity. The deep, strong, and palpable desire that humanity exist on Earth in a good and dignified manner became the focus of his life. He engaged his intelligence, heart, and exertion in order to bring about this profound inspiration. My father's vision of enlightened society was not a utopian fantasy, nor was his wish for humanity to live in harmony born from a naive understanding of worldly affairs. It came out of witnessing the horror of human savagery. Because he had witnessed human degradation at such an intimate level, his desire to create a good society is a testament to his character and a reflection of his ability to forgive, comprehend, and assess. Thus, the source of this social vision was the durable quality of the human heart. That makes me think about what you just were saying about when you face that obstacle, actually dealing with the obstacle actually lights up, like Brett said, what's needed. Versus, you could easily see going down the other track of bitterness and revenge. So, I wrote down because I wanted to say further that what I just videoed for for our YouTube, for what our Instagram,
All the socials.
our social media, which is that this year we're going to host the series of weekend retreats called Shambhala Training, which they are meditation retreats, and they kind of work through, progressively more getting used to and expanding on our meditation practice. But you can go to lots of meditation retreats that have that focus. I think what's unique about this one is that it really does, because of Trungpa Rinpoche's vision, it really does connect the bravery that we develop by sitting and being with what's happening, and then how we mobilize that bravery to be in the world in a useful, helpful, sane way, and connect it to other people. So it kind of bridges the individual and personal with the societal, which is why I like it. I guess I wouldn't be that interested in meditation that was just an individual type thing. So I wanted to make that connection, and also to say that this Wednesday, everybody's invited to our meditation in action session, which is Kate Smith is going to offer it, and it's about sacred groves. It's about trees. But also just, she has very unique views on how we learn to relate to the earth. Kind of what we were talking about a couple weeks ago with how the indigenous people all around the world relate to their world, natural world. And then the Wednesday following, which is the 19th, we're going to have here an hour-long information session on the Shambhala training weekends, because I really wanted people to be able to ask questions before they, what am I getting into? And the content, what it's like, what the purpose of it is, how much meditation we're really going to have to do. So everybody's encouraged to come to that. Check it out. Of course, we would love to have a little community doing these weekends, because it's just a real bonding experience, and it's good to go through that with people. So we're going to be here doing the weekends in Birmingham, but we're going to be hooked into people doing them around maybe around the world, who knows, and in other centers. So it's like local and not local at the same time. But I'm happy to talk more about that. Any last comments? Questions?
What were the 3 verbs that the Sakyong used? Forgive, comprehend, and
Assess.
accept, assess. What was the right toward the end? What is Dad?
Forgive, comprehend, and assess.
Assess. Okay.
Yeah, I think I said this to that last class that we taught in January, is that when you teach these Shambhala training weekends, you of course as a teacher have to teach from your own experience, but the structure that you have for each of those weekends, Trungpa Rinpoche created himself, and it was purposely to do this, to say, here we are. It's just us, but we can do it. It's basically his. We can do it because we're basically good. That's our basic nature. We can argue about that another time.
I was just thinking about how to use that nowadays, and I'm not sure how well I can forgive some of the harmful things that have gone down. I can understand the idiocy of the people and why they do the things they do. Am I judgmental? And then I guess assess is what can we do moving ahead? Is that what assess is, I think? Like vote them out? But anyway, I was just trying to remember those three.
It's an interesting question because we are going to have to forgive. Because we can't have a society. We aren't going to be able to have a society that holds on to that.
Yeah, because it'll always be polarized.
Yeah, in my best moments, I think this is actually, this kind of practice is, and the framework that the practice goes into is really what everybody's going to need if we're going to survive. In my worst moments, I say, oh, we're cooked. But that doesn't help. Yeah, that's a good challenge. So I'm going to light the shrine and we can do some meditation practice.